In this video, we'll look at constructing walls, including different wall types that contain multiple layers of framing. So for example, this is a single wall, and it has several components, but two of them are framing layers that actually frame. We also have a space between them that serves as an additional insulation area. If I go down to the foundation, you'll see a single wall here. It's also comprised of a framing component, a concrete wall component, and an insulated airspace between them. Let's go back up to the first floor and decide we're going to select and open this double framed wall. Go to Wall Types, click Define to get into wall type definitions. And notice there are exterior layers, each row is a layer, main layers, and interior layers. And it's very easy to move layers around. You simply select a layer and move it up or down in the list. So for example, I could say I wanted this first stud framing layer to move down into the interior group of layers. It would still frame, but it could sit here. So we can move them up and down. We can delete a layer. We can also copy layers. So for example, if I were to select this and click Insert Below, it would mean insert below on the screen, insert toward the inside of the wall, a copy of this previously selected layer. Then I could move it down and position it accordingly. We'll look at working with these wall layers more in just a moment. But let's cancel out of this and notice that this wall has a label, Wall Detail 2. Each wall has a unique label, and the labels correspond to the project browser's list of wall details for this floor. So Detail 2 is right here, and I could double click Detail 2 to see just what this wall looks like. And notice there are framing labels. The framing labels layer is on, and so we see framing elements that have been assigned a label. And the label on the wall displays and correlates with the project browser labels because we have the Walls Labels layer turned on. And also, we can see our double framed walls in 3D views. Here's a metal stud interior wall, and we see these surrounded by double walls with single walls in the attic and garage areas. So now that we've had a bit of an overview, let's decide that we're going to build a couple of walls. In fact, we'll do it in a new plan. And I'll go to Build Wall, Define Wall Types. And we're starting with siding 6. Let's decide to switch to concrete, 8-inch concrete, and build a wall that frames inside the concrete. So we have the concrete layer and this layer that we cannot assign materials, patterns, textures, and fill to. This layer simply resides here, is not deletable, and draws the line for the inside edge of the wall. Let's insert above this, and we'll have another interior layer. It's currently insulation air gap, and if we want an air gap between the concrete, we could put this here, or we could even move it up into the group of main layers. And then we could make it whatever thickness. Let's accept that. And then let's insert below, which will make a copy of the selected layer below it. And we could change this. So for example, I'll double click, change to framing, first studs 2 foot on center, and we have this. We need to select here and simply change the thickness of our first studs, and we've completed the wall. Although we could insert below, and we could move this down if we wanted it to go into the interior group, and then we could change this to wallboard, 4x8 drywall, 1/2 inch. Make sure we set the thickness correctly, and we've completed a wall. We also want to make sure that these wall settings are correct. We're currently building the platform to the exterior of layer 1, which is our concrete, and dimensioning to that same layer. And it's important to make sure that these settings are as desired for the current wall situation. So now that we've built this wall, let's build one more. And I'm going to go find siding 6 and work from it rather than starting from scratch. So we have the exterior, main layers, and interior layers. The exterior layers are all just fine. I just want to make a double framed wall. First studs 24" on centers looks pretty good, except that I want to use 2x4s. So I'll change it to 3.5, and if I want a different fill, I can just click here. And I like using a custom fill chosen from one of the several pattern files available, chieffill.pat. And then within that, at the end, you'll find a 67 fill wood grain. And if we set the preview width to 4 and we reduce the scale to about 0.2 or 0.3, we can preview what it's going to look like, change its color and so forth. And I decide that I like that. So I'm going to insert below, and a copy is made. Well, instead of going through all that pattern fill work again, I'm going to insert below again. And I've got my 2 framing walls with the right pattern fill. Then this middle one, I'm going to change from studs to insulation. And we have an insulation bats material we can use. And we can change its fill pattern if we want. And I'm going to change this to 5.5 for that space between the 2x4 walls. Make sure my wall settings are good. Everything is going to layer 4, which is the outside of the main layer group. So this is now a completed double wall. Let's click OK and begin to draw. I'll draw a wall, and since I changed siding 6 to this, it's already my default wall. And now that we have some walls, why don't we build the framing? I'll double click the general framing tool, wall, build wall framing, and click OK. We'll display the layer here, and now we see our wall framing, which we can see in wall details as well as in 3D framing overviews. Notice the studs are staggered, and if you don't want staggered studs, there's a default you can change. You can also change a setting wall by wall if you wish, but let's go to defaults for walls for our exterior walls and to the structure tab, and you can uncheck stagger multiple framing layers if you don't want them staggered. There's one more thing to keep in mind as we close this video. If we go back to defaults for walls, to general wall defaults, you want to select the correct resize about condition when you're replacing one wall with another wall of a different thickness and differently positioned main layers. Typically we would resize with this set so that the main layer, the outside main layer, does not move in plan when the wall has to resize. But you can choose other options depending on the condition you're working in. And so now we've taken a look and we see we can easily construct new wall types from within the wall types definition dialog. We can insert multiple framing layers that frame and display in plan, 3D, and wall detail views.